I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? Well, it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Well, your faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof, her beauty in the moonlight overthrew you. She tied you to the kitchen chair, she broke your throat and she cut your hair, and from your lips she drew the hallelujah. Baby, I've been here before. I've seen this room, I've walked this floor. You know I used to live alone before I knew ya. And I seen your flag on the marble arch. And love is not a victory march, it's a cold and it's a broken heart. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Well, I did my best, wasn't much. I couldn't feel, so I tried to touch. I've told the truth that I didn't come to fool you. Even though it all went wrong, I stand before the Lord of song with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Thank you, Andrew Tinker, for that beautiful, beautiful rendition, not only of one of my favorite songs in the whole wide world in honor of Leonard Cohen, but so exquisite for today. Thank you so much. Yeah, so as we begin to settle in, you know, as I said, the music lifts us. It's just that wonderful psychic bath of joy and opens our hearts to go deeper. And there's no one who can take us deeper in a more extraordinary way. A man of extreme integrity, the deepest practice of the science of mind, an amazing grasp of the principles, and a walk, that I only hope one day to emulate. Dr. Edward.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Petra. She says all the things about me that I think about her. It's like a mutual fan club we've got going on. I said in the first service that if I wasn't in Santa Rosa, I'd probably come to church here. Yeah. Well, our topic, as you heard, for the whole month is wholeness. It's the central teaching of Centers for Spiritual Living and the Science of Mind, probably the most profound teaching and the most difficult to understand. Because on one level, we sense it as a reality and a truth that we are drawn to. And on the other hand, we can't figure out how to explain this world in that context, or how to even understand our own lives in the context of wholeness, and yet we continue to be called to it. Wholeness is typically thought of as undivided, nothing missing, no parts absent, complete. So wholeness is the big picture view of everything, and as such, it can't be limited to just one point of view. It can't be limited to one party. It can't be limited to one nation, or one gender, or one religion. Because that wouldn't be wholeness. That would be incompleteness. Yeah. Oh, there's another voice. Well, wholeness has to embrace all of the voices. The surprising voices, the disincarnate voices, the agreeing voices, the disagreeing voices, all the voices. You know, as much as I would like to eliminate all of the dissenting opinions in my life, if I got that right, it wouldn't result in wholeness. It would result in dictatorship. I would be a good dictator. And it doesn't mean, wholeness doesn't mean you have to agree with all of the voices or even like them. It's simply an acknowledgement of their presence. They exist. It allows for them. I was talking to a friend of mine in Santa Rosa. He's having a very difficult time right now because on social media, every time he makes a post on Facebook about his political point of view, a family member posts the opposing point of view. And it's just making him so agitated. So I was thinking, how am I going to advise him how to cope with this? And it came to me. Block him, I said, block him. But blocking is denial that the voice exists, and it doesn't prepare me to meet the complex nature of this world and the challenges that are in it. It just pushes me into my little ivory tower where I only talk to the opinions that I agree with. That's not whole. Wholeness has got to go beyond that to the good of all. It has to go beyond self-interest. It must consider all of life, even the parts that I am not part of, all of everything. I was reading some disturbing news about the United Nations and these emerging 54 African states who are opposing the appointment of a independent investigator to help protect gay and transgender people from violence all across the world. And these states are recruiting additional support from other nations because what they're implying is that this kind of protection doesn't even belong in the human rights system. It just helped me really appreciate our movement, Centers for Spiritual Living, where we have a diversity commission, where there is a commitment to listening to and sharing the experiences of race and gender and class and ability and ethnicity and culture. for the value that it brings. And wholeness requires that. Wholeness has got to go deep. It's got to go beneath the surface. It's got to look beyond, further into. Wholeness cannot be understood without embracing diversity, without complexity, without subtlety, without confusion, without ambiguity, without contradiction and differences and mystery. It's all part of it. I have a friend who I work out with, and we were at the gym working out, and he said to me, "Oh, I heard that you wrote the book on meditation." I said, "Well, yes, I did." He said, "Well, my doctor told me I have to meditate. So can you just give me the 5 bullet points of meditation so I can see if I want to do it or not?" I said, No, I can't do that. You can't learn about meditation with 5 bullet points. You have to go deeper than that. You have to really practice it. You have to read something, any book about it, and you have to practice it during the times that it's working, and then during the times when it's not working. You've got to go below the surface. You've got to go beyond simple. You'll never understand meditation with a 5 bullet point summary. Wholeness is like that. Life is like that. Can't understand life by referring to a meme on Facebook. You've got to go beyond that. All the time. Infinitely. Because wholeness is infinite. Which means that there is endlessly more to it. So I can't say I understand it today, so I don't have to think about it tomorrow. Because tomorrow arrives and it brings with us a freshly prepared batch of infinity. Whole new variety of oneness to consider. And wholeness is more about unity and connection than it is about separateness and differences, and yet it has to go beyond the unity inside of one group. Because if unity in my group means that your group suffers, then what is that? And do I even want that? And wholeness is unearned. It's just reality. It's what is. And ours is the journey of realizing that and bringing it forth. One of our colleagues in Napa at the Center for Spiritual Living, Reverend Julie Schmidt, wrote these words. She said, "Nothing external will ever truly fulfill us until we live from our innate wholeness. If we are carrying around the mindset of division, then we will continually see ourselves as separate no matter what is happening. How about instead," she writes, "if in each moment we try to see each other through the lens of our interconnectedness, how would that change the way we interact with each other in this world and how we think of ourselves?" She says, "Because this is not about drawing fullness into you, but allowing the presence of wholeness to emerge from within and express." So it's a wonderful thing that this month, Centers for Spiritual Living, some 200 centers are all talking about this concept of wholeness and how to live it in the world, how to let it come out into the world. It's important to me. I got to think about it because I may not understand how I am connected to and part of all of the things that are happening in the world. I couldn't possibly understand that, I might tell myself. And yet, can I let my focus on wholeness affect the way I show up and talk to other people about it? I may not understand why this person does what they do or that nation does what they do, and I may not see how I can possibly be part of it. And yet, can I let my contemplation of wholeness determine what I say, how I love, how I care, what I share, how I serve. It's important for me to try and keep my attitude of wholeness fresh and alive, at the same time remain authentic about those experiences when wholeness seems to be flying out the window. I read an article in the newspaper. You're going to love this. Certain churches foster a maddeningly upbeat pep rally atmosphere in which anyone experiencing a crisis must either cover it up, shape up, or ship out. Well, gratefully, this was not written about your center, nor mine. But don't you understand what the author is saying? Oh, I understand it. And the importance of understand. I want to know that there is a place for everyone in our centers, especially when we are feeling less than perfect, less than centered, less than whole. Because we teach in Science of Mind that our thought is creative, and we participate in creating this world together, and we can choose our attitude and response in the way we show up. Those are important parts of the teaching. And here's the part that is sometimes forgotten. We teach also the importance of being compassionate with each other when we are facing the difficulties and challenges of ordinary life, because when we are going through our stuff, we don't always look and act or behave like the high-minded spiritual beings we know we are supposed to be. Not when we are panicked or sad or confused or stressed. We have a temporary departure from the awareness of our innate wholeness. I remember a while ago I was in a home supply store shopping, and somebody had leaned a plate glass up against the counter and it was broken. And I reached for something and I cut my hand on the glass. And there was just blood everywhere. Now I'm going to confess to you. It's very important to me, I realize, to look good. I also know that I do not cope well with blood. And I don't like to make a fuss, I don't like to draw attention to myself in public, and I certainly do not like to make a mess. We put all of that together, and that spells disaster. And I started to cry, uncontrollably, not because it hurt, but because I had lost control of my personal presentation. And I wasn't as high-minded and as centered as I would like to be. And things started to come out of my mouth. And I can just imagine someone in the crowd looking at me and go, this guy needs to go to the center and learn some of those classes. He needs to meditate. I thought about that because I'm thinking about our nation right now in this election process. You may have noticed that people are feeling stressed right now and slightly edgy. And it's easy for irritations to flare up even between people who normally love each other. It sort of manifests as a lack of focus and an inability to stay centered on such things as our innate wholeness. It's fraying our nerves. It's like we're going as a nation through a wounding. And not everyone is showing up as high-mindedly or as centered as they might hope to. Stress can do that. Whether it's the stress from an election or from a divorce or from an illness or from a child in trouble. In Santa Rosa, we're reading a book together to help us focus on wholeness, and it's this one, Through the Flames by Alan Locus. He's a Buddhist meditation teacher, and in the book he tells the story of his survival from a deadly plane crash and how profoundly and spiritually it transformed him as he worked through the harrowing aftermath of disfiguring burns. And the role of compassion and love and wisdom, how that played a part in his journey towards understanding his innate wholeness again. So the title, Through the Flames, is not a metaphor. It's actually what he lived through. And in the beginning of the book, there is a poem by Dina Metzger. A sacred illness is one that educates us and alters us from the inside out, provides experiences and therefore knowledge that we could not possibly achieve in any other way, and aligns us with a life path that is ultimately of benefit to ourselves and those around us. Surviving the crash, it seems, brought Alan Locust to an insightfulness and a wisdom that, who is to say, he might not have been able to achieve any other way. I heard a speaker once refer to experiences like this, and he called them dark gifts. The sort of experience that a person wouldn't necessarily consciously choose, but an experience that in the end profoundly transforms one. I think our country is going through a sacred illness, and it's educating us in the form of bringing our issues from the inside out. They are ancient issues. And the other side of this journey, who is to say, perhaps our evolution. And while we're going through it, we don't seem to be able to keep our focus on our interconnectedness, our diversity, our shared humanity, or any of the things that are the heart of being America. But it's a temporary departure. And as each of us return to the contemplation of our wholeness, one consciousness at a time, through patience and compassion and determination, we are sure to be restored. Remember the article I read? It goes on. It says, there is a tendency among these church groups to promise people that if they dedicate themselves to the teaching, their lives will suddenly be better. And when that doesn't happen, people can tend to sink into serious depression. Well, when I began my studies at the Center for Spiritual Living, things in my life did suddenly get better, except in those parts of my life where they got suddenly worse. That was embarrassing. I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't know how to think about it. I felt like a failure, and I kind of hid it away. And it took a particularly compassionate and wise teacher to explain to me that it's normal. It's the way of things. It is typically the case that when a person starts to work on a block in their life, all of the things that put that block in place come up to be dealt with. So I might say I'm working on having a meaningful relationship, and then all my irritating personality quirks come up for me to deal with. I might say I'm working on prosperity, and then I get to face all of my issues around receiving and giving and control and manipulation and worth. Oh, things, it seems, can get worse before they get better. And as they travel through that better-worse dance, it's important to remember that wholeness isn't changing. Wholeness is permanent, infinite, eternal. Now, it's so easy to look at someone who is working through their stuff and get all judgmental about it and forget that their wholeness isn't diminished by their journey. And it is difficult to understand what other people are going through, especially if you've never had an experience similar to what they have. I mean, it might be easy to dismiss somebody for being overly sensitive to something, say, like, I don't know, their appearance or their gender or their race or whatever, until I experience being discriminated against for something I have no control over. And that's when understanding starts to arise and compassion starts to emerge, because I'm experiencing a parallel and I'm starting to feel something that might be similar. I can begin to identify. But I can't have all the experiences of all the other people around me, and yet I can still try to understand another person, even if I don't have the same experience of them or the same beliefs as they do. I can try to see where they are coming from, and if I let myself be sensitive to their point of view, that's called empathy. And empathy is very important in understanding and wholeness. Empathy allows me to accept that there are other points of view, that there are other people here. Empathy allows me to take down walls. It's the antidote to separation. Empathy allows me to look for similarities. It increases understanding. And empathy allows me to embrace the endless complexity of being. Wholeness is the big picture. I try to remind myself that wholeness doesn't end because this or that happens. Wholeness is all voices. And a reminder to me to pay attention to which of the voices I'm listening to and which of the voices I'm allowing to scare me. Wholeness has got to be beyond my needs. It has to be inclusive of the good of all. And if my good is at your expense, can I call it whole? Wholeness has got to go deeper than what's on the surface. It's a reminder to me, don't let social media make up my mind. Wholeness is infinite and endlessly complex. A reminder to me, don't settle for the easy. Dive in. Wholeness is more than unity in one group. It is allness, if anything. A reminder to me to be conscious of the influence of mob mentality. And wholeness is the unearned, permanent reality of your being, and there is not a thing that you can do to earn your wholeness. It doesn't depend on what happens to you or what happens in the world. It's a fact of your being. So how do I let that emerge from me? Well, Alan, in Through the Flames, he suggests we use the ancient Buddhist practice of offering blessings to people as we intersect with them in our lives. Whether it is at the supermarket waiting in line, he suggests we offer silently to them, "May you be happy." Or if you're driving on the freeway, as people pass and go around you, offer to them silently, "May you be happy." Or if you're in a disagreement, even in the midst of the disagreement, offer to the person silently, "May you be happy." Or if you're alone and afraid and uncertain, offer to yourself silently, "May you be happy." It's a form of loving kindness, and I think that it is the best pathway I know of that leads to a profound experience of wholeness. There is a postscript in his book that I'd like to share with you. One day in early November 2013, I went for my occupational therapy appointment in the hospital. And while I was waiting for the elevator, a woman walked up to me and said, "Paul, "No," I replied, "Alan." She said, "Oh, yes, Alan. Do you remember me?" I looked carefully. "No, I'm sorry." "I'm Mary," she said. "I was one of your nurses in the burn unit." "I'm afraid I was in bad shape at the time," I replied. "I don't think I would recognize anyone from the burn unit." "Oh, that's okay," she responded. "You look fantastic. I can't believe how good you look. We all thought you were, we thought you were going to." I helped her out. "You thought I was going to die." "Well, your injuries were so bad, your burns were," a pause, she swallowed, "but you were always so kind, so kind." The elevator door opened and I said, I'm afraid I have to go. I have a therapy appointment. It was good to see you." She stopped me and said, "May I give you a quick hug?" Of course. As I held her, I could feel her start to sob. She wiped her eyes and said, "I'm sorry. I'm just so happy you're okay." "Thank you," I replied. "Me too." The elevator doors closed and the crowded car ascended slowly to the 18th floor. I thought once again about how when someone suffers injuries to the extent that I had, they do not usually get to chat about it a year later. Gratitude, humility, and awe swept through every fiber of my being. I had survived. I was alive. Why and how barely hold passing interest anymore. What I do with my remaining time means everything. Above all else, when I'm finished with my days, may those who knew me say, "He was so kind." I read this because I'm thinking about the process we're going through together. And I travel to the future, and in my imagination, I want to be able to look back on myself and ask the question, will people observing me be able to tell that I believed in an innate wholeness that connects all beings by the way I showed up, by how I spoke, and how I loved and how I served? I'd like to offer you the complete Buddhist blessing as our closing prayer and our practice together. I invite you to breathe in and sigh, letting your eyes close if that feels comfortable. Here are the words. May all beings be happy in themselves. Whatsoever living beings exist, without exception, whether weak or strong, whether tall and large, middle-sized or short, whether very subtle in form or very gross in form, whether visible or invisible, dwelling far away or not far away, whether born already or not yet born, may all beings be happy in themselves. So let no one work to undo another. Let no one think badly of anyone, either with anger or with violent thoughts. One should not wish suffering on others. And just as a parent would watch over an only child with love, in the same way, let us develop a mind unbounded towards all living creatures. Let us develop a mind of loving kindness, unbounded towards the entire world, above and below, and all the way around with no holding back, no loathing, no enemy. Standing, walking, sitting, or lying down, as long as we are free from inactivity, we should resolve upon this mindfulness. And so letting our thought then dwell upon that innate wholeness that we also call the living Spirit Almighty, let us together realize our connection to one another and to all beings everywhere through its eternally present power. And through this contemplation, let us remember together our capacity to love, to share, to empathize, to connect, to care, to express, to choose, to create. so that we may return to the conscious awareness of the power that resides in us, as if we are coming to our senses. Abandoning all hypnotizing thoughts that distract us from the truth of our being, we become centered together today through the power of this creative mind that is thinking through us now. And so we give thanks for this. And we release this word of prayer into the law of mind. And together we say, and so it is. Once again, I invite you to breathe in with me and sigh.